Hey there. Welcome back, Miss in the Islands. Can you hear me? Okay. We're recording. If it doesn't stream, we're good. Okay.
Okay.
I can send the recording because that was the whole point of it. All right. So, LaShawne Holland. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Today we're going to be talking about Born to Multiply. All right. And as God would have it, she said she found a picture of us probably about 5 years ago.
Yeah, about 5
And we
years.
took a picture together, and she had on a shirt that said Born to Multiply. And I didn't really remember how I knew LaShawne, but I knew her because we both were columnists for Gospel Today magazine, and we both love Dr. Teresa Hairston.
Yes.
Shout out to Dr. Teresa Hairston. She is still one of my mentors. And this particular kickoff of this show, I wanted to have one for Speakers Magazine because she's a speaker, and we want to bring speakers that feed and feature speakers. And so one of the things, she is a speaker, we want to feature her, but I want her to feed the speakers, meaning like feed them with information, knowledge, and wisdom. And money is what she talks about a lot in the book, Answers All Things. Money is a defense, and she is the money lady. She calls her the green
Queen of Green.
The Queen of Green, right? And she has to tell you a little bit about her story, just the background, but I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and why I decided to do Speakers Magazine. Speakers Magazine, you can see one of the covers in the background, is a magazine to give people an opportunity who are speakers who have a message to share out to the world, where I give them promotion and PR. And so a lot of times new speakers don't have a platform to really get the shine that they deserve. So just like we do with podcasting or YouTube, we create our own magazine. So it's online as well as people can actually get it at conferences, because people need to go to conferences, which you talk about a lot, going to conferences, making sure that you're feeding your brain. And so you go to speakersmagazine.net, you could download it for free. You can get the physical copy in the mail for $24 a year, or you can go to the conferences like this one here with Bishop Vashti. At her conference, we actually had the magazines there, and all the attendees get it. And so while we're there at the conference, we do the social media, we do the behind the scenes, we do the interviews, and then leading up to the conference, we actually promote it. And we just give as much push about it. We only try to feed people with knowledge, wisdom, and information that's going to change their lives. So if it's a conference that has anything that's foolishness or whatever, we ain't doing that. Okay, this is serious. So that's why we did it. So recently I did a survey, and I was telling LaShawne before we started that I did a survey to really ask people what is the main problem that they have in marketing their book, brand, or their business. And I'm thinking like, oh, I need to learn social media, or I really need to know how to do Facebook Live, or whatever it is. No, 45% of the answers to this was, I have no money and I've been praying for guidance. The biggest problem I have is the finances it takes to properly market the book. I need money to market. The extra funds to kick off a marketing campaign. The lack of finances of things to do the things that I like. Lack of funds, cash flow, the budget to market my books and services. And not only was I just like really, my heart was heavy, because it wasn't like I was trying to sell them anything. I had a product that was like 59% off. It was like $100. So it was just like a birthday gift I was giving them. But for everyone to say that's their main problem, or 45% said that's their main problem, it's like, okay, you've been on my list too long for that to be your main problem. I mean, you could not go to Starbucks maybe every other day and have enough money, or you could not
take the acrylics off.
Yeah, take the nails. Just what I said. Take the nails off.
Take the acrylics off.
Take the nails off. And, do something with the hair and put it in a ponytail like you did for a year. You said you did one of those is sacrificial things. It's like, how bad do you want it? And so when I called LaShawne, I was almost like in tears, because her book, Born to Multiply, really, really speaks to the answer. I know that I can help you with marketing and branding and PR, but I can't help you with mindset about money. And so I just really, was really just distraught about it. And then LaShawne happened to launch the book, became an Amazon bestseller, and she's going on a book tour. But she really talked about this book, and she's the Queen of Green, meaning that she went from what they call from the bottom to the top. Now she here, but she was born to a teenage mom.
Yep.
Graduated from college, Morgan State University.
Yes.
Accounting. She always loved numbers. I guess she had this thing about money and numbers. And eventually she raised 3 beautiful children, married. She's a multimillionaire. She just got back. You see, she got these braids. She was in the islands. She was in St. Martin and all this kind of stuff. But she's debt free, and she really talks about how she made that transition from, it didn't happen overnight. She was working for other people, but when she really stepped into her calling to do what she needed to do, it all clicked. It clicked not only just for her, but for other people, which she really realizes her calling is to really help other women, especially women of color, how to multiply their money. Born to multiply, if you're not really like no Christian stuff, but that's one of the rules that God told us to do. He told us to be fruitful and multiply. And so that for her, being a numbers girl, the queen of green, that stuck with her. And this book, when I tell you, it is so good. And she even has like a little, this part of it that you can download when you get the book as well. You go to that link or whatever. And that's really, so LaShawne, help us, tell us about the rules of the game, and what this conversation is going to be about is really dispel some of the myths, help bust up some of the mindsets to keep women, especially in lack, or mindset of thinking that they're in lack, and then really talk about the book and how it all came about, and even your calling, calling, or a new way that you're doing in your book tour. So we want to make sure we know where you're going.
Yeah. I don't know if I was always a numbers girl. I mean, to be very honest, when I was in college, I came up with the degree of accounting because, contrary to what people believe, I wasn't good with numbers. So I knew engineering was not going to be a part of my future. I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college. So I didn't have time to go to law school and medical school. So that out, I felt like doing something in business was just too broad. And I remember standing in the hallway thinking, okay, what else can I do that I can possibly make some money at? And I loved my accounting teacher in high school. So I just checked the box for accounting as a major. And I mean, when I look back, hindsight, I get that, I was actually following God's plan for my life then. I didn't know it. I just thought I was doing a process of elimination. Let me hurry up and check a box. I was the first one in my family, to go to a 4-year university and graduate in college. And so as I got older, I realized, especially by my senior year, because I got married my senior year of college.
Okay.
So my husband and I would celebrate 25 years of marriage this year. And for me, it was, I just knew it really hit me because I was pregnant with my oldest son. And I remember sitting in his nursery and thinking I didn't want him to start from ground zero. And that was just a very pivotal moment. It was a surreal moment for me because I was sobbing, crying, and I had done this beautiful nursery in a Noah's Ark theme. And I just don't want and I'm taking 23 credit hours to try to finish up. Long story short, my grandmother who raised me was dying. And the only reason I got married my senior year is because I wanted her to make it to my wedding. And I knew if I put it all, she wouldn't make it. So I pushed it up to my senior year. And, I was just feeling a lot of emotions, but I knew if I was going to stay on the financial track that I was on, that he was going to be starting from ground zero when he became an adult. And that's not what I wanted. And so I made a decision about 3 things. I knew I didn't want him to start from ground zero. I wanted my ceiling to be his floor, and I wanted to be able to give him the exposure that I never had.
Wow.
Oh, that's for me where it really started. And so that was my why. And I tell people, when people come up with a big enough why, the how becomes very easy for them. So in order for me to do that, and then I was attending all of these finance conferences at church, and I was getting frustrated because all I ever heard was a bunch of scriptures about how God wanted me rich. Nobody ever taught me how.
There you go. That is so true.
Nobody ever taught me how, and I'm not like bashing the church or anything, but there's more to it. Sewing is a part of it, but it's not the total part of it. And so I actually was at my son's school. We enrolled him in a school that nobody in my family or none of my friends had ever done. The tuition that particular year was $26,000 a year. It was something that I know, right? And this was for the fourth grade.
I read that in your book a lot, LaShawne. So what made you, it was something very adamant about why you wanted to send all your kids, you have three kids.
Yes.
To private school. What was it about that that was a major thing for you?
Well,
at one point you were paying almost $100,000 for your kids' tuition.
$98,000 a year is what it cost us to send the three of them. And so it wasn't just private schools. All private schools aren't equal. I wanted to be able to put them in independent schools because I needed them to be able to see something different. I believe if you put something different and in your ear gate, it gets into your heart and it becomes a part of your life. And so part of me wanting to give him exposure, I knew money was made off of who you know and not necessarily what you know. And so I needed to be able to get them in a very different environment. It wasn't just about the academics for me. So it was kind of different. My kids had always been in private school all their lives. But then my oldest son was just different. I mean, in the third grade, he tested on a 10th grade level.
Wow.
And so they skipped him 3 grades. He was 8 years old in class with 12-year-olds. He skipped 3 grades and he started shutting down socially. So I knew I had to do something different. And the Lord spoke to me and he says, what you're looking for, you're not going to find in the Christian school. And I was at the grocery store and I heard someone mention to me about independent schools. And so I went home and I researched, and long story short, we found one that we put him in an independent school. And so their Rolodex is very, very different than the average person's Rolodex. My kids have been flying on private helicopters and jets since they were in lower school, middle school, traveling the world during the summer. You know, they have more stamps on their passport than I have on mine.
And what is that, the son that won the Black Enterprise?
Well, both of them won the Black Enterprise. He won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Kid of the Year. And so they've been the first, not only African-American kids, but the first kids, period, to speak on the stage at Inc. 500 because they entrepreneurs since they were little. And so I needed to be able to shift the family dynamics of what I experienced growing up for my kids. And so in order for me to do that, there was a mindset shift that needed to happen. And I'm coming to the story of why it happened. So we were at his school and we're sitting down. And I watched Knight Kiplinger, who is the founder of Kiplinger Magazine. It's a financial magazine. Mm-hmm. He graduated from the school. And so it was a meeting and I was sitting across the table from him. And I watched him write out a $15 million check without flinching as a donation to the school. That night we were having a finance conference at my church. And the guest pastor that was speaking, well, all he talked about was cars, gator shoes, just stuff that weren't assets. And I'm sitting in my seat thinking, I am so tired of hearing this. I don't know what to do. Like nobody's telling me how. And so, but yet when I look at Knight, Knight drove off in a Saturn car. He had on a tab collar shirt with the buttons right here and some Dockers. You would have never known that he was able to write out a $15 million check. And so I believe success leaves clues. So who do you think I'm going to listen to? The man that's talking about planes, trains, and automobiles and shoes, or the man that can write out a $15 million check without flinching? And so I knew that there had to be a mindset shift in what I was taught growing up, the things that I saw about money, the things that I heard growing up about money, the things that I experienced, about money. There had to be a shift for me. And so I just started not only reading a lot, but placing myself in the atmosphere where wealthy people were. I used to drive to gated communities and I think I tell the story in the book about me going to the mansion and eating every day with a brown paper bag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I tell that story. I know everybody, it's a ghetto story, but it's my truth.
Right.
And because I needed to shift what I was seeing. And I used to go every day with a brown paper bag with my lunch. And I was pregnant with my son, and I would sit down into the model home and eat my lunch. I mean, the salespeople all knew my name, and they didn't bother me. They just let me sit there and eat lunch. Fast forward 2 years later, I was living in a property that was much bigger than the mansion that I was living in, more land, and I had made $500,000 on my second investment property. And so, the difference that a year can make, but for me, it started with my mindset and shifting how I was doing things. Who I was hanging around. We used to go to dinner every Sunday after church with friends. Well, I knew if I stayed on that path, nothing was going to change. And so my husband and I decided that we would stop doing that. And so our Sundays were spent vision planning and spent reading books. And, I talk about how I wore a ponytail for a year. I took my acrylics off. I haven't had my acrylics back since I took them off. But, the money that I was spending, because I believe people have money, it's just where they choose to spend their money.
And this is true. And one of the things that that you talk about in the book, it's like we know what to do in terms of with our money. Obviously, if you spend more than you make, you're going to be in debt.
Right.
And so how is it that we get the discipline to either do it, or either the revelation in our mind to really, really want it bad enough to change? Or one of the things that helps with people who do amass a lot of money without really having the discipline or even making a lot of money themselves is to have it automatically deducted from like their accounts, like before they get an account, or just automatically doing that. Because sometimes we don't have the discipline to do it, but something that is automatically deducted, just like almost kind of like some charges, something that's automatically deducted from your account and people aren't really aware of it. And then at the end of the year, it's like, I spent $120 on that. And it was automatically deducted. So it's almost like the mindset of, if our mind became automated, or we knew things could be so automatic of things that we need to do it, like brushing our teeth is so automatic. So money needs to be the same way.
I think money needs to be the same way, but oftentimes people tell me I'll hit a stage, and one of the first questions I ask is, how many of you could stand to have a little bit more money in your bank accounts? And just about every hand in the room always goes up. And so I go into my story, and I think it's not even about discipline. For me, it was about having a big enough why. And having a big enough vision for me. I talk a lot about vision in my book. Everything for me starts with vision and mindset. Nothing shifts, no matter if I was trying to get to the 6-figure level, there was a certain mindset that I needed to have. When I hit my first $1.6 million level, there was a mindset that I needed to have. There's a mindset that I needed to have to go for my $10 million target level. And so every new level that I've ever reached, I had to do a shift internally. And that shift comes, people don't realize this, but by the age of 7, your subconscious is already formed. And so people don't realize this, that your financial habits are based off of what did you see growing up around money?
Wow.
What here, did your parents argue about money? If you grew up in a single parent home, like for me, my mom used to always say, what do you think money grow on trees? Like I hated hearing sayings like that. And so my mom was 16 years old when she had me. And so she struggled. And people don't realize that we do have a money blueprint. And that blueprint is formed when you grew up by the things that you saw around money, the things that you heard around money, and what you specifically experienced around money. I had a client of mine years ago who came to me, and she said, she was like sobbing on the phone when she called me. And she said, I never realized this until you walked me through the process, that my fear of money came because they didn't have money growing up. And she fell and broke her arm. and the hospital bill came to the house. And when her dad opened up the bill, he started screaming and hollering at her about creating another bill that he didn't have money to pay. And so from that moment, she was very fearful to open her mail. So she had bad credit and stuff because she was charging, but she was always fearful of opening up her mail to look, and she treated her money like she was just an ostrich and would bury her head in the sand. And it wasn't until she realized that fear was a part of her money blueprint. And we walked through the stages of actually how to shift that. And so even in marriages, the statistics show that money is the number one reason that marriages fall apart. And enter into this union not understanding the different blueprints that our spouses may have. I grew up very differently than how my husband grew up with money. He's the only child. I was the only child with my mom, but his parents gave him everything. And so my experience was an experience of struggle. So struggle was a part of my blueprint until I made a decision that I just didn't have to struggle. No one ever told me that because everybody in my immediate environment, we all live the same way. And so again, it was the things that I saw, the things that I heard, the things that I experienced growing up. We don't realize how much of an impact that has on how we treat money today. And so did you see your parents invest money growing up? Were your parents or your mother or whoever, a person of influence, did they save money growing up or did they use credit? Did you hear arguments in your household about money so you don't talk about money? Especially with women. Women don't talk about what they're confused about. They don't confront what they're confused about. And so a confused mind does nothing.
Or they're just not confident. They're just not confident about talking about money.
They're not confident. But why? There's a reason, a root cause of why that is. And so how we live our lives every day and what you see with your money is just the manifestation of what I call the fruit of the roots that's underground. If you are, people don't realize that there's an emotional component to money. And so
money is very emotional.
Money is very emotional. And so you have a bad day at work. I know I can't afford to shop, but I'm going to go make myself feel good. And I'm going to go shop and buy something. And so money, there's an emotional attachment to it. But if you're not made aware of this, then you're going to keep going through life blindly, not understanding that your money deserves your attention. And if you don't pay attention to those things, you'll end up in life and your kids will start from ground zero all over again. And so really, it's about mindset. People don't get that money has a language all of its own. And so it's not attracted to negative environments, negative speech patterns. And so, my kids grew up in a house where they never heard their father and I say we couldn't afford anything. It was always, instead of saying I can't afford something, trying to figure out how we can afford it, right? And so especially for believers, it's like God, who is the master creator.
There you go.
He blew his creative ability into every human being. And so for us to say we can't afford something, that automatically cuts off the channels of abundance flowing to you, instead of just saying, how can I afford it? So God's creative ability, the same creative ability that he has, he's given to us. And so to say I can't afford something versus how can I afford it opens up two different energy levels for abundance and ideas and witty inventions to start flowing to you. And so mindset is such a huge part of building wealth and shifting what's going on with our money, and people don't realize it.
I want you to tell the story about your son. The son that you spent $25,000 in, a stock education, or what was it?
Options trading class.
Yeah, in a stock market investing course. And this was the same son that won, well, you said both sons won the Black Enterprise Teampreneur.
Yeah, it's my oldest. Yeah.
It's the oldest. So
yeah, it's the
this is a son, this is a miracle son, because it's like he's skipping 3 grades. He is
Yeah.
with a teampreneur. He had a business that he has several businesses, but you talk
When
about
he
in the book how he really, really wants to own like a chain of research labs and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But what was the business that he had that that
He made 6 figures in?
Yes.
By the time he was 13 years old?
Right.
Yeah, he made $110,000 by the time he was 13 years old.
Come on now.
Off of shaved ice. And so I've always taught my kids, if you're gonna do something, find the biggest way to do it and then do it. And so I didn't allow him to start out with birthday parties or community days or nothing like that. If I was going to have to get out of the bed and my husband had to get out of the bed to help them with their business, it had to be a lot of people there. And so they just would serve large events, and that's how they, I mean, some days they would come home and they would make $8,000. And I'm talking, this is a 12-year-old, 11 and 12-year-olds. And my daughter was like 8 at the time, making $8,000 in a day. And so we just took the things that we learned in business and we experimented with them, and it worked out. And so if I could teach kids how to multiply their money, he's now an options trader. I have a annual event called the Wealthy Revolution. And so he teaches investing at Wealthy Revolution. On the second day, he teaches options trading.
Oh,
and
my God.
To be honest, I wish I would have spent that $25,000 before I spent the $200,000 sending him to college.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I believe that kids, what you do in excess, what you do in moderation, your kids will grow up to do in excess. And so, he's found his niche in the marketplace. And so early on, I would start with my kids. If they were at their grandmother's house and the ice cream man would come, I would always talk money to my kids. I would say, he's your liability and you're his asset. They knew that assets put food on the table and money in your pocket, and liabilities took money out of your pocket and food off the table. And so I did that all the time with my kids growing up, so they could understand what their money was doing at all times. And so if they wanted to buy tennis shoes, I would constantly say, I'm only going to give you so much towards these shoes. Figure out how you're going to get the rest. Understand, if you're going to spend this much, the least you could do is get a dividend check from him every quarter. I'm constantly in their ear, about that. And so they started investing. Most preteens, when you walk in their room, they have posters of, well, in my day, it would have been Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson. Today, it may be Kyrie or whatever the other players are today. Instead, my kids grew up with stock certificates hanging on their walls because they started investing very early. But again, it was a mindset shift that needed to take place. So instead of me spending my money on a bunch of game systems, you create assets that pay for the game systems. Hey, I love luxury. I'm not saying not buy luxury, but the problem that we have is we try to get a luxurious lifestyle off of earned income.
Ooh, explain the difference of the different types of income. You talk about that in the book.
I do. And so I'm actually going to draw something out really quick.
Okay.
There is 3 different types of income. There's earned income, there's passive income, and there's portfolio income. Mm-hmm. And so earned income is what you make off of a job, right? Going to work every day. Passive income is what you would make from a business, being a business owner. And then portfolio income is income that you make from your investments, right?
Real estate or stocks and things like that.
Yes, your stocks, your bonds, cryptocurrency, commodities. Commodities are anything that was produced from the earth, like your gold, your silver, your oil, gas. Those are commodities. Okay. And so what we try to do, I don't know if you've ever heard of Robert Kiyosaki's cashflow quadrant.
If you haven't, you mentioned him a lot in the book. So yes, I have.
I talk about him a lot. That's one of the first books that I read that totally changed my mindset about what I was. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad years ago. And so, but everybody falls into one of these 4 categories: E for employee, S for self-employed, B for business owner or business systems, and I for investing. And so we try to live a life of luxury from the highest tax bracket that exists, which is the employee. It's the highest tax bracket, right? And so we try to live a life of luxury from here instead of building assets or building wealth on the right side of the quadrant through business or invested in allowing the money from your assets to pay for the luxury lifestyle or the things that you want. And so we build it tail backwards because we're not putting our money in the assets and allowing the assets to produce the things that we want.
I like that. LaShawne, your sound went out because we're talking about there you go. You're back?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
So you talk about the earned income, the passive income, and investment income.
Yes.
Okay.
And so until we started, which is why and then I would get frustrated. I would attend conferences that would talk about money. Again, they were never telling people how, which is why my conference, all we deal with is money, period. We deal with different types of asset classes. I have, one of my closest friends who is a multimillionaire with real estate. He comes in and he teaches things that your average real estate investor is not going to teach you about overages. Most people don't know about overages, but overages. And so wealthy people just play from a different playbook. And I bring in my community at the event, and that's what we teach. I don't have time for a bunch of fluff. I believe motivation with no strategy still leaves you stuck. So my goal is to teach people how. And I don't have all of the answers in the world to help everybody's financial problems, but we can all start from someplace. And I just share my journey in the book and, what shift needed to take place on the inside of me and the things that I did, for that shift to happen that allows me to live the life that I now live.
It has the gig economy, they call it the gig economy or the freelance economy, or the solopreneur economy. Has that really changed how people should be handling their money or how they are handling their money? Are they running more credit because of the gig economy?
No, number one, I believe that we are now living in the credit-rich, cash-poor generation.
Credit, okay.
Yep, I believe that, but it doesn't matter whether you're a business owner or not. If you don't know the rules of money, if you don't know the offensive plays, I'm a football mom. My son just graduated from Penn State University, played football for Penn State. And so, I tend to talk a lot of football concepts, but if you don't know the offensive plays, the things that really put scores on your financial scoreboard, if you don't understand the defensive plays about money, then whether you're a business owner or not, a solopreneur or not, I have so many solopreneurs contact my community because they're either not making money or they don't know how to multiply their money. And that's the biggest thing. The money that you bring in for your services, instead of you spending them on the newest Mercedes that comes out, putting that money, we're getting ready to have one of the largest crashes that the world has ever seen. I talk about that. I'm not sure if you got to the psych part about
the bubbles. Yes, I did. That was that part. That part right there, you gave a history lesson. It was like, wow. That part alone is worth the price of the book, let me tell you, because you really break it down for someone who's not into that industry to really understand.
And that's why I wanted to add it in there because sorry about that. My phone is on. We actually don't invest. Nobody teaches us how to invest. And so I wanted to dispel all the myths of what people thought about investing because you don't learn anything. Most people say, well, I sat down and I spoke to a certified financial planner. Well,
about those are salespeople.
They're salespeople, and people don't really get it. They make money off of the products that they have to sell you. And so your money works for them before it ever starts to work for you in the market because of the amount of fees that you pay. And that's They don't tell you that. And so you become wealthy in the market by doing individual stocks. That's really where the wealth is. And so we have to spend time educating ourselves, and I want to take away the fear, and help people become confident. That's why I added that chapter in the book.
How much money have you spent over the years in terms of your education and masterminds and group programs and conferences would you estimate that you've spent?
I am sure I've spent close to $750,000 over the past 2 decades on masterminds and different programs. The first mastermind that I ever took was like a $10,000 mastermind years ago, and that was a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go home and tell my husband that I want to spend $10,000 on he was like, oh.
And you had 3 kids in private school.
Had 3 kids in private school, and he was like, what? But he was like, okay, I trust you.
Mm-hmm. And it was an investment. It wasn't like I'm going to take $10,000 and I'm buying a couple of purses and some luggage.
And most people don't understand that there's a difference between value and cost. They get caught up on the cost of something. Value will last a lifetime. It's what I teach my children and my children's children. It's the things that I can carry with me forever. It's not like buying a dress that in 10 years I won't be able to fit into that dress anymore. Value stays with you, and has the ability to live on from generation to generation. Costs will come and go. And so most people get afraid. And I had someone at my son's school teach me this, because I had never thought to spend $26,000 on 1 year in elementary school. Are you crazy? And so I remember the headmaster of the school sat down at the lunch table when we were going on a tour, and he said, don't be afraid of the cost. He said, get him in here, get him admitted to the school, and the money will come. And that's literally what happened.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For us. And so I never allowed the cost of something to scare me away, because I just figure out how I can afford to pay for it. It's not I can afford it. It's how can I afford to pay for it?
How bad do you want it? Exactly.
How bad do you want it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's funny to even see if you start operating like that, even your kids pick it up. When my sons went away to school, I noticed my daughter will always come in my bedroom at night in my closet. I didn't know what she was doing. I was like, what in the world is she doing? And my sons left some of their clothes here when they went away to school. She had set up her whole little page on Poshmark and was selling. Listen, she had a wonderful gig going on. She was selling other people's clothes.
Oh my God.
The customer was paying for the shipping, and she was using my personal thank you cards to write them handwritten thank you notes. And then she was keeping all of the profit. She wasn't sharing. She's like, look, if you don't wear it, I'm selling it. And so it's really fun, because my kids, they operate like that all the time.
But the mindset that they grew up with.
And mindset that they grew up with. My youngest son, when he went to Penn State, he would go to the thrift store and buy jeans. He would spend $7 on the jeans. He bought a $20 tool to distress them. And then he was selling them to his teammates for $65.
What? Okay, that's entrepreneur brain right there. That's entrepreneur right there.
But that's how they grew up in a household. I will always tell them, okay, this is what you want. How do you plan on getting it? And so when we don't do that, we just cut off the creative ability that God has given each one of us. I talk about it in the book, Bankable Purpose.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody that was ever born that was born without a gift. You have some talent, some ability, some gift that you can use to be able to create wealth in your life. And we're not trained to recognize those things. And I believe it's because the world has programmed us to be managers, but God wants us to be multipliers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's one of my favorite parables, is the parable of talents.
Yep.
And the
Matthew 25. Yep.
Yes. That is one of my favorite, because I always tell people that you basically need to use your gift. If you don't, you're a wicked, lazy servant. But it's, because it's real strong words. It's like,
that's strong words.
Yeah.
But it shows you how important or how serious God really takes your ability to be able to multiply your money and to more than what you start out with.
Mm-hmm.
But we're trained like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that if you could think of a pattern, I guess you would say, like a common thread. We know what to do, but we don't do it. So people who've been on my list, maybe for years and years, I say, what's your number one problem about marketing and promoting your book? And people will say, it's money. So what is a common thread that you see, especially around maybe Black women or women of color, about their internal struggle that they have, or the things that they're doing with money or not doing with money?
A lot of it is their belief system. You know, when I would take surveys, I would be blown away at the number of people who would be honest and say, I don't believe that wealth is possible for me.
Oh, wow.
And so you do what you know. One of the, I think the most three dangerous words in the English language is, I know that. No, you do what you know. If you really knew it, you would do it. Like, you know, I go.
That's true. People who do better know better, or people who, yes, that's so true.
Most definitely. So a lot of it has to deal with their believing, whether they believe that it's possible. So we treat wealth like it's a moving target, right? It's very hard. I grew up, my father was heavily into archery. And so I could watch him running across the field and shoot a deer bullseye with his arrow.
Wow.
So, but we treat wealth like it's a moving target. And as long as it's going to be a moving target for you, you'll never break it down into doable numbers. And so if I want to be a millionaire, if I want to make $1 million this year, I have to break it down. In order for me to do that, divided by 12 months, that means $83,000 a month needs to come into my business. Okay, how many weeks are in a year? The average is 4.5 weeks. Break it down some more. 4.5 weeks, that means I think it's like $33,000 a week. Break it down. Divide that by how many days that is in a week. And so ultimately, people don't chunk it down into believable pieces. $1,285 before lunch, $1,285 after lunch. If I can do that on a consistent basis, 12 months from now, I can be a millionaire. But we don't chunk it down. And so it's so much easier for us to say, I can't afford. It takes you being creative to figure out how you're going to afford it. And so for you to say that you can't afford something, listen, it doesn't take you. And one of the myths that I hate people say, you have to have money to make money. You can start. I started out with vending machines. I talk about that story. I got a bonus, and instead of me paying off bills with that little $3,000 bonus almost 30 years ago, I decided to do something different. And so it wasn't enough for me to do real estate at that time. So I bought vending machines. And then the money that came in, instead of me paying off a bill or going shopping, because your money stops working for you the moment I would have paid off a bill. But that's why I hate budgets. There's a section in the book I talk about how budgets suck. Financial planners hate when I talk about how budgets suck.
You call it a spending plan.
Yep, I call it a spending plan. And so, you know, I realized that my money would have stopped working for me then. And so I put it into something that could make more money for me. The money for the vending machines allowed me to be able to eventually buy real estate. I think my first real estate property I made like $47,000 off of.
Wow.
And me out of debt, the debt that I was in. And so I believe that
that's what you teach in your courses.
Yeah, that's what I teach in my courses. You have to be able to expand your means. You don't get out of debt by being on a budget. If all I make is $40,000, $50,000 a year, being on a budget doesn't shift anything for me. It leaves me living inside of a box. And so I didn't get out of debt by being on a budget. I got out of debt by expanding my means. And so the real estate allowed me to purchase a brokerage firm. And so my brokerage firm allowed me to do other businesses. And so it was a stair step. People tend to think about all the things that they don't have and what they can't do instead of looking at the talents, the abilities, the gifts that they already have on the inside of them, which I call bankable purpose.
Mm-hmm. And you had a lot of mentors, you had a lot of coaches, you read a lot of books. In the book, you talk about some other books that you read that you think every person should read. One of them is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. People say that a lot. The Big Idea by Donnie Deutsch. Prepare to be a Millionaire. The E-Myth Enterprise by Michael Gerber. I love Michael Gerber. And there's just a lot, you mentioned obviously Loopholes of the Rich by Robert Kiyosaki. Before You Quit Your Job, Robert Kiyosaki. The Start with Why by Simon Sinek. And then there's one book, Harv Eker.
T. Harv Eker. Yep.
Yes.
Millionaire Mind.
Oh, now that was one of the ones you talk about. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a change for you. The Millionaire Mind was the one that really shifted for me. When I read that, it was almost like reading your book, because I'm telling you, I have just like outlined the book, highlighted, it started. That's the same way I did with this one is like so on time, because it really talks a little bit. It makes investing money more like it's almost like it's a natural part. It's something that is very part of you, very biblical, very real estate is it's been in the Bible. That's like where you create wealth. And so when you break it down like that, and you just make it very, very simple so that people can understand it. But the one that Harv Eker talks about, it says, thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions, which leads to results. If you think and act like rich people do, you can create the results that rich people create. Yep,
I have those same cards right here on my shelf.
You can't find these cards anymore. I'm trying to find these cards. I bought these probably about, I don't know.
I bought mine several years ago, but I got them off of Amazon.
You did? I bought this at, Barnes and Noble or Borders. I think I probably bought at Borders. It's not a business. So, but those cards.
We also deal with very in our African American community, we deal with a very different set of problems. And I talk about that also in the book, but how poverty really is planned in the United States. It is planned, or not just the US, just in the world in general. When I was in St. Martin this past couple days ago, I was just talking to someone, and I see the same issues no matter whether I'm teaching in the UK or wherever I'm teaching. The same issues is people have to switch what they're doing with their money, but it starts with mindset. It starts with believing. And so, consumer debt right now is at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. $14 trillion. And so when you look at, there's a reason why they don't teach money in school. There's a reason why our education system is so archaic, but the reason that they teach you to go to college, get a good job, because they want you, it's more profitable for them if you remain on the left side of the quadrant as an employee. That's where the world makes their money. The world makes their money off of people who have low financial IQs. The world makes their money off of us staying in debt. And so they understand the power that comes with wealth, because impact and influence comes with you having, wealth, and they understand that. And so we just have to be really smarter. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, even with the book, is to create a revolution. But in order to create a revolution, people really do have to get upset. They have to get mad. They have to wake up and get angry about where they are. Listen, you haven't arrived just because you can afford a Lexus or a Mercedes. Because is doing, when you buy it before it's time, it robs you of the opportunity to be able to multiply your money in the marketplace. And so it is planned for you to be able to buy houses that you really can't afford. When I look at the crash of 2008 and 2009, that was planned. They absolutely knew it was coming with those subprime loans. Just because markets move in cycles, they know this next one is coming also. And we have to look at where we are. And most of the time, people come to me with money issues when one or two things happen: motivation or desperation. We have to move out of desperation and do something and shift what we're doing with our money. It's not that we don't have it. It's what we're doing with what we have. Everything becomes a seed form. If you can only afford to buy a book, then buy a book. If you can't afford to buy a book, go to a library. You can download library books now online. And so it's no excuses. No, we
No,
have to be able to position ourselves to be able to make more money. And so you say you may not have a marketing budget, but you can start with $10 a week. Start with the level of where you are. You know, anything over zero is a plus.
yes.
So in order for us to be able to create a financial revolution, we have to understand that the situations that we're in is planned for us to be there. I was with my brokerage firm. I'm in Wall Street meetings all the time, and I hear the conversations that they have about us, you know, and so these things are 100% absolutely planned. It's planned not to give African Americans funding to be able to start their businesses. I've met people that have come here from Afghanistan with a $20 bill in their wallet, and now they're multimillionaires off a rim shop selling rims, and they only put the rim shops in the ghettos, you know, in urban areas, because they know we're going to spend our money. Wealthy people aren't spending their money on that stuff. So poverty is planned. One of the things I did with my kids when they were little, I would take them to wealthy neighborhoods and tell them, count how many liquor stores you see on every corner.
Ooh,
Count how many check cashing places you see or payday loans you see up here.
Or even signs that just say buy liquor or whatever. You don't see those signs.
Could not find any. Then I take them to an urban area, check cashing places and payday loan places on absolutely every corner. Do not tell me that it's not planned. That's why when you go into department stores, department stores are one of the worst types of credit that you can have on your credit report. That's they offer you at department stores. Listen, when you go on to Neiman and Marcus, they're not asking you if you want to sign up for their credit card. You go on to Macy's, every single cashier is asking you that. Why? You know you're not going to pay that stuff off in 30 days.
Yeah,
and so if we become aware of the cycles that keep us in this state, you can do something about it once you've been made aware of it. People won't change until they get angry enough to change.
And that's one of the things too. When you find something that really makes you angry, you move in passion. And so with you, the whole money part of it, of just looking at it and just your story, your money blueprint, really, and then being in church, you know, your life, and just seeing like, okay, I know that God wants me to be blessed, but what's happening? What is you telling me that I can be, but you're not telling me how. And over time, it became a point where it's like, okay, there's something that's missing. And you went on like a mission to really find what was missing in between, like what God said and what's going to happen. And it really came down to this book. It's like Born to Multiply. This is so good. So we had a lot of people coming on. I'm gonna send this replay out to the list to let people ask you questions, but I want people to know that you're going to be doing a book tour as well, and then how they can even go dive deeper with you in terms of your courses and your mindset. You have some online courses and things. So explain to people the different ones, what level to start with first.
One of the things that I'm doing right now, if they want to get on my list, they can go to LaShawneHolland.com. But I'm doing, it's called the Relentless 7, because in building wealth, you really do have to have a relentless mindset that nothing's going to stop you. It's free. I did it, launched it at the end of the last year. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. Literally, it's taken on a life of its own. And so you can go to, it's LaShawneHolland.com. LaShawne
with the E.
Yep. LaShawneHolland.com, Relentless. Actually, let me look. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right thing. But it's a 7-day challenge. And then, you know, from the 7-day challenge, it just causes you to think about things that are very different that you're doing with your money and your life. Most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want. And so design the Relentless 7 challenge so they can be very clear about the things that they want and how they can go about and getting it. And so it is the Relentless7challenge.com.
Okay, Relentless7challenge.com. 7 spelled out or 7 with the number?
7 number. The number. Relentless, the number 7challenge.com.
Okay. All right. Cool, cool. Because one
Yeah.
of the things, this was teaching you how not to just have money, not to just be rich, but how to create wealth and how to leave legacy. That's one of
Most
the things.
definitely.
And I mean, this right here, the blueprint that you lined up in this book really is good. And you know, you put a lot of Bible references in here. It says, the Bible says, no one listens to a poor man, though he may have the most wisdom of all. I want people to know that she is a multimillionaire, so you can listen to her. So so she's spent enough in mastermind conferences and reading
Yeah.
and really investing in herself. She said almost like $1 million. So
Yes.
it's not like you could become a multimillionaire by investing, like just buying a couple of books. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's not what we're
Yeah.
saying. But you really have to change your mindset by really putting in new information. Information changes the seasons of your life. So if you want to change your season, you put in new information. And so
That's right.
I wanted to introduce you to everyone because, one, I think you're so fabulous. I think you just really
Thank you.
have such a gift to the world, such a calling, strong calling. And I love that you're trying to
Thank
help
you.
really women and women of color just really
Yes.
to get their money right, get
That's right.
it together. And you're explaining to them, not because you're up here, but you started at a certain point and you had the revelation to really move to this level. And it's you can see it from your kids. Your kids
Yeah.
are doing it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so the kids are doing it. So I just want to say, and your pastors did an excellent job. I love your pastors too, by the way.
Thank you.
They're
Thank
really
you.
cool people too as well. So I just want to say thank you. And are you going to come to Detroit on the tour? Are we going to see you on the cover of
Yes.
Speakers Magazine
Actually,
2020?
do you know Bishop Corletta Vaughn?
Yes, I know Bishop Corletta Vaughn, one of my clients.
Yes. Okay. Well, the tour is going to be at her location. So I come in. We're looking at
October?
we're looking at September 14th.
Good. Okay, so come before the snow.
Around there. And so get on my list. I'll send you the information, but I'm going to be at Corletta Vaughn's for my book tour in Detroit.
Yes. She's actually, I think, also on the school board as well.
Yes, she is. She just won the election this year.
Yes, she is. So I know about Bishop Vaughn. So she
Yeah,
is
she
one
tried
of
to get me to do 3 days in Detroit. I was like, Bishop, you know the tour is only like one day.
you know how
45 minutes. Yeah. No, I need you here for 3 days.
So I will definitely send out information of that. So if they could go to speakersmagazine.net as well, I'll send the replay out. I'll send out information about her tour, and she'll be in Speakers Magazine for your event, which is coming in 2020. You're doing your event.
March 19th through the 23rd.
So she will be on one of the covers, like Bishop Vaughn is back there doing that. So, but really, she really wants to make sure that people change their mindset, change their habits, create what she calls wealthy systems, which is what she says a lot in the book. It's not just a mindset, but also how to do the wealthy systems. And anything that is in a system automated makes it easier for you, and you can
system set you free.
Yes, it is, girl. You said a word right there. Okay. So thank you so much, LaShawne.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been good. All righty. We'll talk with you later. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.